at Light Reading's 2020 Vision event in Lisbon this week, and I'm joined today by Andrew Coward from Lumina Networks. Andrew, hi, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
So 5G obviously has been a hot topic for the industry this year, and we're now starting to see talk of deployments. Can you tell me a bit about how Lumina specifically fits into those plans and why maybe things aren't moving as quickly as some people might hope?
Well, actually, I think things are moving
Okay.
pretty quickly. It's just that they're moving in the background.
Yep.
Because when we think of 5G, we tend to think of the radio, when we think of new handsets and so on. But there's a huge amount of prep that has to go on in the back end of the network to basically accommodate all the new services and how this 5G network will operate. So for us as Lumina, working with big carriers like Verizon and AT&T who invest in us as well, the whole objective is to create this back-end infrastructure that's ready for 5G when it comes along.
Okay, and what exactly is the particular bit that you're addressing?
Yeah, so for us, being in the SDN business, this is really driving automation for 5G, and specifically what happens to services and how they get kind of created into slices.
Yeah.
So what that means essentially is when I want to stand up a new customer, a new network, if you like, inside my 5G for a specific enterprise, then what I need to be able to do is create a slice of that. And I do that by basically virtualizing and with SDN, configuring all of those virtual appliances and physical devices too, to deliver that slice to that customer.
And network slicing is pretty critical, isn't it? This is one of the big sort of differentiators with older mobile networks.
That's right. It's one of the things that is going to be a lot more easy to deliver in 5G. Now, again, we could deliver that with 4G. This isn't a radio discussion, but it's the fact that in parallel with 5G, we're moving to virtualization, we're moving to SDN, we're moving to these slices, and this becomes a fundamental architectural advantage through this whole process.
Okay. So what would you say are the sort of roadblocks that the industry faces at the moment when it comes to actually building out 5G networks from Lumina's perspective? Yeah,
well, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, and so getting every vendor who's going to be in this network working in this automation and the fabric of how this is going to get delivered is important, vendor by vendor. The existing legacy infrastructure, because remember, we're not ripping everything out by any sense, right? We're using what's there and we're adding new things and we're virtualizing. So tying all that together takes time, and vendor by vendor, they have to be brought into the automation framework. The methods by which the slices will be created or the network will be configured has to be done until you've got to kind of complete. It's no good having 95% of the vendors in the network working in this and 5% not.
Okay.
You've got to get to that 100% complete. And that's the effort and the hard push that's going on.
And are you encouraged by what you're seeing there in terms of getting all the vendors kind of working together? And because interoperability is always this thorny topic that comes up year after year, it seems. Do you see that kind of starting to progress in a more positive way at the moment?
Well, I think, again, when you look at large companies like AT&T or Verizon, they've been very clear to the vendors that if you want to play in our network, you will work in these new ways. You will deliver data models that enable us to drive automation. You will have a standard interfaces like NetConf that enables us to easily manage these products. And so from that perspective, they've got the message. Now, there's vendors that are coming along to this party willingly, and there's some that are being dragged kicking and screaming.
Right.
But reality
You're not going to
is,
mention which ones, though.
well, maybe not. But the reality is, they're not going to sell into carriers, and we're seeing the same start to play out in Europe as well.
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, from the work that you've done so far and the proofs of concept that you've been doing, are there any lessons that you think operators can learn when it comes to starting off on their 5G plans? I mean, most of them, I guess, at this stage are beyond the planning point and now starting to think about deployments.
Right.
But how can that best be done, I guess, from your own perspective?
Well, they have to get the POCs. There's so much work in the labs, they have to get that out into the real world in the existing network. And they don't have to make the move to 5G radio, but they have to get some trials working in the real world. And the reason for this is it turns out that when you start deploying in the real world, obviously things break, and you need to understand what that looks like. Because doing this for a trial with 100,000 customers or 10,000 customers is going to be very different to doing it for 1 million or 10 million. But if you can't even get to that first step, then you don't know where the problems are. So we see massive issues in the beginnings with how all these devices get automated, what happens over time. Do the network stay stable over time? How does that play out? All of these things are important to resolve now, and that cannot be done just by operating in a lab.
Yeah, and you don't want to be dealing with those problems when you're scaling up, clearly.
Right, because the pressure, as soon as that radio network shows up, then the pressure is massively there. So here's the time to get out and actually deploy in these early stages and get the technology hardened and ready.
Yep.
And so we think about it with many vendors who are having to come into this automation framework. They haven't seen this deployed yet. They've got, oh yeah, we wrote the interface. Yes, we wrote the software. Yes, we got the data model. Well, have you actually deployed it at scale in the real world? Well, yeah, but we think it's going to work. Okay,
Yep.
let's prove it.
Well, I guess next year when we meet again, things will have moved on quite considerably.
I know,
So
we've
it'll
got
be
a year of
interesting to
fun.
see where we're up to. Yeah. Okay, thanks very much, Andrew.
No, thank you. Thanks.